Well, hello, you hungry listeners. I'm Chef Huddleston, and I have a question for you. Do you remember the days when mothers and grandmothers were in the kitchen cooking? They would be peeling their potatoes and telling their stories and sharing their advice. So much joy filled the room. Well, I'm stepping up to the plate and following in their footsteps by sowing recipe seeds into anyone who is hungry. Today, I'm going to be cooking and sharing the recipe story behind a very, very special recipe. It's so yummy and smells so fabulous when you cook it. It's called chicken and broccoli Alfredo stuffed potatoes. Now, before we get started, I can feel you out there, overthinker, a lot like myself. I know just by hearing the title to this recipe, you're probably already thinking, Chef Huddleston, I've tried to cook before. Cooking can sometimes be difficult and hard, and at times I just make a mess. Well, I'm here to tell you that yes, there will be a mess to clean up, but the mess is always bigger when you're trying to cook without a recipe. I want you to know that there is value in every recipe that you cook, just like there is value in every problem that you face. Listen closely. I want to share with you my secret on how you can deposit and benefit from the value when you got the right recipe. But sometimes in life, we tend to create or even end up in a mess. But remember, we all have the ability to cook, clean up the mess, and yes, benefit from the recipe that we thought would be too difficult to create. When I began to understand the concept to this secret, then the meals that I cooked, and including the bumps in my everyday life road, began to turn out right. But first, I had to stop thinking that I wanted the recipe. Instead, I had to focus on why I needed the recipe. The why gives us motivation and drive to accomplish an assignment. Your reason why is your assignment. Some assignments are bigger than others and require more strength, knowledge, and discipline. The assignment is nothing more than a problem that needs to be solved. I call these assignments cooking with a purpose. For example, most realtors put in a lot of hours into their weekly schedule. If you have ever inquired about a home on Zillow, you would understand what I mean. Those agents will respond pretty much any time of the day or night. However, a friend of mine who is a realtor, and despite her busy schedule, every Sunday morning she gets up early and cooks breakfast for a little elderly lady. I know I don't know the condition of this lady, but I know every Sunday a need for her is being met, but not by a chef, but by a realtor. Next, you must understand the requirements of the assignment before value can be released. Requirements consist of time. How much time does an assignment need, or how long does an assignment last? As long as your heart allows you to carry the assignment out or until you are replaced. That could be for at least a day, or maybe even a year, or even just for a moment. Cooking with a purpose began building my confidence in the kitchen, and it can build yours too. You guys, my purpose became so important that it overpowered my fear of making mistakes in the kitchen. Now I can produce more. This is where the value comes in at. Value is defined as the regards that something is held at to be deserved, the worth of usefulness of something. This value goes out and it comes back to us in many different forms. Forms such as love, peace, and yes, financial value too. Yes. I'm going to show you how my value came back to bless me financially in my story. Now that we've got some ground rules on how this works, let's focus back on this yummy, yummy recipe story. This recipe was created when I was in the middle of a real life situation that was going from bad to worse, and I had no instructions. Sometimes crazy situations in life reminds me of cooking your grandmother's favorite recipes, but without a recipe card for the instructions or the secret ingredients. The value can never be activated and released without instructions. For the chicken and broccoli Alfredo stuffed potato recipe, you will need a potato peeler for 6 large potatoes. Just by saying that makes me remember watching my grandmother peel potatoes when I was young. She didn't have a potato peeler. She would use a small paring knife. So, I'm happy that times have changed, and yes, I think the potato peeler is much faster. You will also need a large bowl filled with cold water to put the potatoes in. This will keep the potatoes from turning brown in between peeling and prepping them to be cooked. Aluminum foil for wrapping the potatoes is needed. My special house seasoning that is made with different herbs and spices. My boys here in my home, they call it hedgehog seasoning. You're also going to need some olive oil, chicken, broccoli, butter, garlic, Parmesan cheese, Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, sour cream, and heavy cream. That sounds like a lot, but when all the flavors come in together, it turns out to be a truly, truly tasty recipe. Okay, while I'm peeling the potatoes, I'm going to share with you some of the story behind this recipe. I can remember it clear as day. One morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and I had pictures of my late husband scattered all over the table. There were also bills in the midst of the pictures on the table. I had just been laid off my job. I worked for a temporary agency, and the day before, they gave me the news that my assignment had ended. I sat there sobbing at the kitchen table with the bills and the pictures covered on it. And just as I began to sob even harder, I began to think, I need to pray. I began to pray because I did not know what I was going to do next. I did not know how I was going to pay the rent. I did not know how I was going to feed my children. I just didn't know what I was going to do. So I sat there with tears falling down my cheeks and I said, Lord Jesus, help me because I don't know what to do anymore. I sat there in silence. Then out of nowhere, a thought entered my mind. I like to say God spoke. A thought that said, but you know how to cook. Go into your kitchen and see what you got. I went into my kitchen that day. I opened the cabinets and they were practically bare. I saw bottles of Italian seasoning, salt, pepper, grated Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. But when I looked into the fridge, there was 1 pack of chicken breast, a leftover head of broccoli, a jar of minced garlic, and a bottle of half and half cream, and a little bit of leftover sour cream. I gathered all these items and placed them on the counter. Then I thought to myself, hey, I know what I can make. I can make an Alfredo with this. So quickly, I opened the pack of chicken and seasoned it with some salt, pepper, and hedgehog seasoning. Then I grabbed a skillet, drizzled it with an olive oil, and placed a little bit of garlic in it on medium-high heat. Once the pan was well heated, I added my chicken. You will hear a little sizzle as you add the chicken into the heated pan. I love the sound. The chicken needs to be nice and golden brown on both sides. So, if you're one of those people that struggle with knowing if your chicken is properly done like I used to be, then I highly recommend that you use a kitchen thermometer. Insert it into the thickest part of your chicken. The thermometer should read 165. Once it hits 165, that chicken is good to go. It's ready. Then remove the chicken off the heat and place it into a plate so that it can rest. Don't get rid of the skillet now. Let's set it aside. Once the chicken is finished resting, I like to use my cutting knife and chop the chicken into medium-sized pieces. Now for the process of the Alfredo sauce. with the same skillet that the chicken was cooked in. I melted some butter, and for you garlic lovers, I also threw in a little extra garlic. I know we used it in the chicken when we sauteed it, but I threw in just a little bit more. I just couldn't help myself. Next, I combined a splash of the heavy cream, followed by the yummy grated Parmesan cheese, and a little salt, pepper to taste, followed by some sour cream. The sour cream is optional now. I like to add it. It just it just gives the Alfredo sauce a little extra kick of taste. The aroma that you will begin to smell in the house from this sauce mixture cooking is fabulous. I'm going to place my sauce on warm just so that the sauce can stay nice and heated until we need it. Now, people, by this time in the story, I'm in the kitchen and the chicken, followed by the Alfredo sauce, is ready. So I quickly grab a nice sized pot to blanch my broccoli. While it's cooking, I thought to myself, something is missing. Something is missing. Oh, yeah, I forgot about my noodles. So I opened the cabinet to find the pasta noodles and realized that I have no noodles. No noodles. You gotta have pasta for Alfredo sauce. So I thought, oh God, I'm back to square one. I don't even have the pasta to put in this. I stood in my kitchen and I looked over and I saw a bag of potatoes in the pantry. I grabbed the potatoes and I thought, well, I could substitute the potatoes for the pasta. And that's where the potato came in with this whole ordeal, or shall I say recipe. So I preheated the oven and peeled the potatoes real quick with that fast potato peeler, and I placed them in some cold water. After cleaning them and patting them dry, I poked holes on them with a fork, rubbed olive oil all over them, and seasoned them with some hedgehog seasoning before wrapping them with the aluminum foil. I popped my taters in the oven for about 45 minutes to an hour, just until the potato was good and moist and tender. However, to know if the potato is ready, just stick a fork in it. Once that fork glides through nice and easy, then you know that your potato is moist and done. So, once the potatoes were ready, I began to prep my dish. I combined the chicken, the broccoli, and the Alfredo sauce together, giving it an easy stir or two, maybe three. With a knife, I opened up the potato and began to pour in the filling, combined mixture of the chicken, the broccoli, and the creamy Alfredo sauce. With all those herbs and spices mixed together, and they all easily ran down on the inside of that warm, moist baked potato. And at that moment, I knew I had created something. I knew I had created something beyond me, something bigger than me, bigger than the situation that I was currently going through. That same day, my oldest son had stayed home from school. And with him staying home from school, I woke him up and I said, come, 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 taste what I made. And this son of mine, he will try almost anything. He just loves food. I placed the stuffed potato in front of him, and he could not put his fork down. At that moment, I thought, well, I have one more check coming from the temp service. It's not going to be for much, but I could use that check to buy more product, to make more potatoes. Well, I thought it's a long shot, but I'm going to try it anyway. What I got to lose? So I went back and I made another small batch. But I took that batch out to my local community and I just asked people if they needed lunch, for the day. And guess what, hungry listeners? I sold out. I sold completely out of the batch that I had made to the local community. Just local businesses that could not get out for lunch. I offered them a free sample to try. And when they liked it, they purchased. When I had got back home that day, I realized that I had made money for the rent. I had made money to put groceries in my home. I even made money to pay the light bill for that month. I'll tell you what, I was so overjoyed that this special recipe, chicken and broccoli Alfredo stuffed potatoes, had saved the day. So I thought to myself, maybe I can make this a routine thing. I began to go out, and my boys went with me when they were out of school. But daily, I'd make more potatoes. And I prayed and I thanked Him for blessing me with the creation that He had put down on the inside of me. Such a creation that I never knew had value or that I never thought I could do anything with but other than feed my family with it. But it turned into something so much more. So I said, Lord, if the community keeps buying, I will donate to the homeless or to others who are just like me, whatever I have left over, or I'll just make a separate batch to give to them on a separate day. So, me and the boys did just that. At the end of the day, we would take the leftover meals down to the shelter for the women and children who were just like us, as I had promised the Lord. One evening, I had a few meals left, so we went down to the shelter and parked across the street. When we pulled in, we saw that there were only a few people there to receive the meals. So I thought, well, it's about 6 people out there. I knew we had about 6 left. That was enough to give out. So we began getting the meals out of the warmer, and when we turned around, there were about maybe 30 to 40 women and children standing before us, waiting for meals. People waiting for meals. I remember the look on my kids' face, the look on the women and children's face, the look on my face, because we did not have enough. All we had was 6 meals, and those 6 meals were not enough to feed those women and children standing in front of us. So quickly, I told the boys, I said, sons, give them the meals that we have and get into the truck. We got into the truck that day and we just drove away. As we drove away, I sobbed. I sobbed with tears as I drove away because we didn't have enough. And I know what it feels like to be a mother who asks herself, do you take this last $20 and put it into the gas tank for gas to go to work, or do I feed my children? I know what that feels like. So as I drove away, I thought, what could I do? At some point, I wanted to be able to come back and have enough to feed these women and children. So I went back and hit the drawing board again. I began to create more recipes, and I thought that if I could sell more, then I could go back and give them more. I began making other recipes. We developed a recipe that had stuffed meatballs and marinara sauce. We created about 6 other recipes and kept selling to the community. And whatever we had left over, we donated and we gave them more. I hope you were able to see the value in this story and enjoyed listening to how this fabulous recipe began. Remember, I want you to remember, when we cook with a purpose in mind, you can cook anything. You can cook anything. And every meal prepared with purpose contains value. My goal is to continue feeding the recipes to those who are hungry. Hungry for food, maybe love, peace, knowledge, and yes, financial increase. Please visit my website at www.animatedeats.com to get your copy of this fabulous recipe. This is Chef Huddleston. Until next time, you hungry listeners.